Sudan's rival military factions have agreed to extend a fragile ceasefire agreement for another 72 hours. The renewed truce, which started at midnight on Sunday, is supposed to provide some relief for civilians caught up in the fighting, now in its third week. And there are growing concerns about the wider impact of the conflict. The United Nations is warning that an escalating humanitarian crisis in Sudan could affect all of East Africa.
As the conflict in Sudan rages on, the human impact intensifies. Heavy fighting has led tens of thousands to seek refuge in neighbouring countries. Across the eastern border in Chad, the United Nations has sent in emergency response teams offering humanitarian assistance. It estimates that 20,000 refugees have made the crossing since the fighting began, many with tales of violence. They attacked our village and burned the houses, and when people tried to escape, they killed them. The UN's refugee agency has bolstered supplies of relief items like sleeping bags, soap and utensils, but there are fears it won't be enough, especially with rainy season coming.
If we fail to act now, it will be too late. The rainy season is coming in few weeks, and if we don't provide any assistance to the people, the road will be blocked and all the refugees here will be stuck.
But through all the destruction and the horror stories, glimmers of human kindness shines through. This elderly resident of a town close to the Egyptian border spends her days baking bread for those fleeing the fighting. The people of Wadi Halfa welcome our guests. Everyone is welcome. The door is open, the schools, the mosques. The country will welcome any guest who comes to us. We only hope that God will stop the war and that both sides agree to solve the situation, to save our youth and to fix the situation for Muslims. But with supposed ceasefires not holding, agencies fear there's worse to come.
For more, I'm joined now by Mohammed Osman, a Sudan researcher at Human Rights Watch here in Berlin. Thanks for being with us. Mohammed, the UN warns that the Sudan conflict could plunge all of East Africa into a humanitarian crisis. Help us understand Sudan's significance for the region.
So, beside the geographical position, I mean, Sudan's latest years has witnessed so much turbulences, instabilities in terms of violence. There has been already a humanitarian challenges on the ground for Sudan. Meanwhile, that's happening in a region when there is a lot of instability also happening. I mean, if you looked into the western side of Sudan on Darfur, that is bordering with Chad, with Central African Republic, on the eastern side, there is also tension and fighting in borders close to Eritrea and Ethiopia. So Sudan plays as a key location, not only geographically, but also politically. Big parts of the tribal groups living in the borders, they kind of move around it as well. So any move, the situation is going to get worse, unfortunately. And so far, we're not really seeing a proper humanitarian response on the ground. So the chances of even not only the humanitarian impact, we're also seeing the fighting flaring across the borders is unfortunately going to be a reality.
I want to ask you about that in a moment, but first of all, your organization has called on the UN's top human rights body to end its inaction and take measures to hold those responsible for abuses to account, and I was quoting there. What action do you think the international community should be taking in Sudan?
So the fighting we have seen since April 15, we know it wasn't not an isolated incident. It was an outcome of a failed political process in itself where justice was not prioritized. So what we want from the international community is to change course, starting from the UN Security Council, move forward with coordinated set of actions that includes the expansion of the arms embargo, ensure no more weapons reaching to the abusive leaders, that there should be set of targeted sanctions to harm their capabilities to harm civilians further. When it comes to the UN Human Rights Council, we do want to see the mechanism to investigate what is happening on the ground, to have that access and to collect evidence to move forward with recommendation in what accountability measures should be taken against these leaders.
Mohammed, I'm afraid we're going to have to leave it there. That is Sudan researcher Mohammed Osman here in Berlin.